Chapter 19. Musical Therapeutics. Music the fiercest grief can charm, and fate's severest rage disarm. Music can soften pain to ease, and make despair and madness please. Our joys below it can improve, and antedate the bliss above. This the divine Cecilia found, and to her Maker's praise confined the sound. When the full organ joins the tuneful choir, the immortal powers incline their ear. Borne on the swelling notes our souls aspire, while solemn airs improve the sacred fire, and angels lean from heaven to hear. Of Orpheus now no more let poets tell. To bright Cecilia greater power is given. His numbers raised a shade from hell, hers lift the soul to heaven. Pope. In any new departure from the prescribed or conventional order of things in life, there are always those who seek to put obstacles in the way. They are the people who say, "Let well enough alone. Our fathers and forefathers did what we are doing, and what was good enough for them is good enough for us." Such argument, for a time, carries more or less weight with that large body of people who never do any thinking for themselves. It is not to be expected that the healing done through music and color will meet with approbation or even approval from all sources. But if it is true that healing can be best accomplished through the use of music and color, then in the end the truth shall surely prevail. One might easily enumerate the various objections that are likely to arise from those in opposition to its use. The chief objection would be that while it might prove of some benefit to a nervous-minded person, yet it could never be used to heal real physical diseases. How is it possible that such abstract qualities could be made to affect a concrete physical body? Such people reason as though the body were something separate from the soul of man. Why? The very repetition of a sad tone or tones will tend to lower the pulse and oppress all the vital functions, while a bright, cheerful tone will have exactly the opposite effect. Now, if that is true, and it is something that is susceptible of demonstration, how can anyone sing without producing an effect upon the whole physical organism? I am certain that the physical well-being of the body can be more influenced by man's inner emotional nature than by any or all other causes, that the best music does more to awaken that inner nature than almost anything else in life, and that harmonies of sound and color may be so used to act upon the emotional nature that through such action the whole body may be quickened and renewed. Everyone knows how the emotions affect the circulation, either to quicken or to retard it. Harmonious emotion also tends to set up a rhythmic action of the breath, and this rhythm produces a still further rhythmic action of the whole body. It will be found, too, that the breath not only becomes rhythmic, but that there is a decided increase of the quantity of the air breathed in, and therefore the body receives more oxygen and other life-giving properties from the without. All people must be conscious, too, of the disturbing effects produced on the body by the false and unreal emotions of anger and hate, how both these emotions set up unrhythmic and discordant movement throughout the whole organism. If King Saul was soothed and charmed by music so that his evil passions were overcome, surely music could be used for the overcoming of unreal conditions today, just as much as in that faraway day. We all know, if we would only stop to think, how worry and anxiety leave their lines on the face, and how vice writes its tale of disease and death daily upon the countenances of men and women. The people who fret, scold, and grumble not only breed moral pestilence, but eventually undermine their own health. They poison themselves and the atmosphere in which they live. To harbor anger and hate against another not only poisons the mind, but the body also. Anger and hate produce more disease than all other known causes. Anything, then, which tends to overcome or eliminate anger and hate must be productive of great good, since it must act not only as a mental regenerative, but also as a health tonic to the body. All musical tones, whether made by the voice or by an instrument, produce not only emotional and mental changes within the life of the one making or listening to them, but also structural changes of the body. Take a person who feels rhythm and loves music, and you will find such a person expressing a rhythm of movement through his whole physical organism. With the aid of music, we can set up habits of correct physical movement so that after a time it becomes, as it were, automatic. And these right habits, when once established, have a reflex influence both on the mind and the body. That is, if one consciously establishes a rhythm in walking or any other movement, after a time, even if one is mentally out of rhythm, the habit of rhythm will have become so established in the body that it continues automatically, And not only this, its reflex action on the mind will tend to call back again mental rhythm. There is more of real magic for human good in beautiful tones produced either by the voice or a master player of some instrument than in any belief in creeds or observance of forms. They serve to call out more of the religious element in man than any or all external religious ceremonies. They conceal within themselves a power capable of producing the deepest emotions in the listener. While under the spell of beautiful music, all the functions of the body are exhilarated and harmonized. We know, too, that the emotions, when dominated by the spirit of love, joy, and faith, constitute the greatest influence toward higher living. And this, of a necessity, must have its direct action upon the physical organism. Let me cite here an incident connected with the great Italian singer Farinelli. When Farinelli first visited the court of Philip V, King of Spain, where he became afterwards so great a favorite that monarch was laboring under a total dejection of spirits, which rendered him incapable of attending council or transacting the affairs of state, and had the still more singular effect of making him refuse to be shaved. The queen, who had in vain tried every common expedient that was likely to contribute to his recovery, determined that an experiment should be made of the effects of music upon the king, who was extremely sensible to its charms. Her Majesty contrived that there should be a concert in a room adjoining the king's apartment, in which Farinelli, who had never as yet performed before the king, should sing one of his most captivating songs. Philip appeared at first surprised, then moved, and at the end of the second air, called for Farinelli into the royal apartment, loaded him with compliments and caresses, asked him how he could sufficiently reward such talent, and assured him that he could refuse him nothing. Farinelli, as previously instructed, only begged that His Majesty would permit his attendants to shave and dress him, and that he would endeavor to appear in council as usual. From this moment the king's disease abated, and the singer had, ere long, all the honor of effecting a complete cure. The case of King Philip is only one of many similar cases that have been recorded from time to time. Some might say that this illustration goes simply to show the power of singing to overcome mental dejection. But this mental dejection, we are told, made it impossible for him to transact affairs of state, so that the result of his mental state was to interfere with his physical ability to work, showing that just as soon as his mind was right, his physical organism responded as well. Every tone we make with the voice, whether it is a speaking or a singing tone, contains within itself a power for good or evil because of the action it sets up in the life of the one making it, or its effect upon the lives of others. How often we feel, without stopping to think or reason why, how the voice of one person produces a discordant effect upon us, and how the voice of another brings peace and harmony. The tone quality of a voice depends entirely upon the emotion that causes it. If produced by the highest emotion, then there will be found in it something of purity and beauty of tone. For the tone quality of the voice can never be made to lie in the same way that we may use words to tell an untruth. Every tone has its own particular tone quality, and the person who understands tone values can never be deceived by anyone else who may be saying one thing and feeling or thinking another. Each tone is filled with a definite meaning that appeals to a corresponding latent quality or tone in the soul of the listener. Yet if one is only listening to the words, he may be all unconscious of the tone of the speaker, and thereby fail to get any understanding other than the mere words convey. The tone qualities of the voice which produce emotions in the lives of others can only result from the same emotions in the mind or the heart of the speaker. The one, therefore, who recognizes tone values can of a certainty tell whether the speaker is sincere or only trying to convey in a superficial way a true impression. It makes not the slightest difference how one may try to hide or cover up that insincerity. Each tone has its own tale to tell. The power to produce a soothing or a quieting effect through sympathetic tones cannot be done by those in whose minds there rankle the elements of jealousy, anger, or hate. As the faculties of man's mind develop through thought and feeling, there comes also the fuller development and the strengthening of the particular organ of the body that corresponds to each faculty, because each organ of the body only symbolizes a faculty of the mind. I assert, therefore, that all natural development of one's highest emotional nature and the use of all the varying faculties of mind makes for physiological changes, and that such changes are recorded throughout the whole physical organism. If the same time and study had been given to the action of man's emotions and thoughts upon his physical organism that have been given to the study of morbid anatomy and pathology of the body, we should long ago have had a system of healing erected upon a safe and sure foundation. But the materialism that places cause in the physical, and that can never see beyond the mere senses, has prevented the professors of healing from seeing beyond the merely physical organism and the food and drink and other material things that enter into that physical organism. The whole science of healing, then, as it has existed and does exist, is as far from the real truth as it is possible for it to be. When soul and mind are functioning as they should in mutual harmony with one another, we may rest assured that the body will become the faithful mirror of both and will bear the outer record of the inner harmony. Through the aid of music and color, those inner harmonies can be established. Let me refer once more to a little incident in regard to Farinelli to show how much variety of music is needed for the purpose of calling out the higher emotions. When Farinelli was at Venice, he was honored with the most marked attention from the Emperor Charles. But of all the favors he received from the monarch, he used to say that he valued none more than an admonition which he received from him on his style of singing. His Imperial Majesty condescended to tell him one day, with great mildness and affability, that his singing was, indeed, supernatural, that he neither moved nor stood still like any other mortal. But these gigantic strides, continued His Majesty, these never-ending notes and passages, only surprise, and it is now time for you to please. You are too lavish of the gifts with which nature has endowed you. If you wish to reach the heart, you must take a more plain and simple road. These few words brought about an entire change in Farinelli's manner of singing. From this time he mixed the pathetic with the spirited, the simple with the sublime, and by these means delighted as well as astonished every hearer. Very often it happens that the music which is well suited to one person is ill-suited to another. There is no emotion that cannot be awakened through musical appeal of one kind or another, for music is adapted to every phase of human growth, from the elemental stage to the very highest phases of spiritual development, and in not one of the arts can there be introduced that multiplicity of variety that music may be made to carry to the minds and hearts of its hearers. The effects attributed to music in the cure of diseases for several thousands of years seem almost miraculous, but there are so many cases so well authenticated that it is impossible to question the truth of them. Martinus Capella assures us that fevers were removed by song, and that Aesculapius cured deafness by the sound of the trumpet. Plutarch says that the Lates, the Cretan, delivered the Lacedaemonians from the pestilence by the sweetness of his lyre, and many others of the ancient writers speak of music as a remedy for almost every malady. Different kinds of instruments have been especially recommended, at times, for different forms of diseases. Let me cite a few cases to show the marvelous effects of music in the healing of the sick. The Phrygian pipe is recommended by several of the ancient fathers as an antidote to sciatica. And, indeed, according to some writers, every malady has, at some time or another, yielded to the power of music. Modern writers also furnish numerous instances of the effect of music on diseases. In the History of the Royal Academy of Sciences, at Paris, for 1707, a very remarkable case of this kind is related. A musician, who was very proficient in his art and famous for his compositions, was seized with a fever which gradually increased, and became at last accompanied with alarming paroxysms. On the 7th day he fell into a very violent and almost uninterrupted delirium, accompanied with shrieks, tears, horrors, and a perpetual want of sleep. On the 3rd day of his delirium, one of those natural instincts which are commonly said to prompt animals in distress to seek for those herbs that are proper for their case, made him desirous of hearing a small concert in his chamber. His physician did not consent to the proposal without some reluctance. It was at last, however, agreed to, and the cantatas of M. Bernier were sung to him. No sooner had the soft melodious strains touched him than his countenance assumed an air of sweetness and serenity, his eyes became calm, his convulsions ceased entirely, he shed tears of joy, and was more affected with that particular music than ever he had been by any before his disorder, or any that he heard after his cure. He was free from the fever while the concert lasted, but when it was at an end, he relapsed into his former state. The use of a remedy whose success had been at once so happy and unexpected was continued. The fever and delirium were always suspended during the concert, and music became so necessary to the patient that, during the night, he made a relation of his own, who very often attended him, sing, and even dance to him. This relation, being himself much affected, paid him such pieces of complaisance with reluctance. One night, when he had no other person but his nurse with him, a woman who could only blunder out the harsh and inharmonious notes of some country ballad, he was obliged to be contented with her music, and even found relief from it. A continuance of the music for 10 days cured him entirely, without the assistance of any other remedy, except once taking some blood from his ankle, which was the second time the operation had been performed on him during his disorder. To the power of music, however, his cure was attributed. A work in the early part of the last century on this subject cites a number of curious facts, which are adduced as proof that the most serious disorders, after having resisted every remedy, have at length yielded to the charms of music, and that the most acute pain has been mitigated by listening to pathetic melody. The author asserts that in cases of hemorrhage, the most astonishing effects have been observed. M. de Myran, in the History of the Royal Academy of Sciences, France, speaking of the medicinal power of music, says that it is from the mechanical involuntary connection between the organs of hearing and the consonances excited in the outward air, joined to the rapid communication of the vibrations of these organs to the whole nervous system, that we owe the cure of spasmodic disorders and of fevers attended with a delirium and convulsions. Dr. Bianchini says he has witnessed many instances in which music has been applied with great effect in cases of acute and chronic diseases. Dr. Leake says that music produces its salutary effects by exciting a peculiar sensation of the nerves of the ear, which communicate with the brain and general nervous system. He says that its sovereign influence over the mind cannot be disputed, that it is balm to the wounded spirit, exalts the soul above low-thoughted care, and wraps it in Elysium. Dr. Cox relates a case of the power of music on insanity, in which great benefit was obtained in the cure of a soldier by the music of a fife. But the fife evidently produced its effect by breaking through the train of disordered ideas and introducing new associations from the recollection of past scenes in which he was warmly interested. If such cures as I have described in the foregoing incidents have been obtained from music, then it behooves us to think why still greater cures may not be obtained when the use of music with color added to it becomes a thoroughly scientific method of healing. Music has been truly described as the mother of sympathy and the handmaid of religion, but it will never exercise its full effect, as the Emperor Charles VI said to Farinelli, unless it aims not merely to charm the ear, but to touch the heart. And when it does this, it is ready to go a step farther and heal the mind of grief and sorrow, and the body of disease and pain. And this is the high and holy office that music will eventually fill. The composer is yet to come who shall devote his life solely to the production of music, which shall free mankind not only from the burden of sins, but from physical infirmities as well. Said Sudermann, the greatest and highest thing one possesses in this world is his life melody, a certain strain that ever vibrates, that his soul forever sings, waking or sleeping, loudly or softly, internally or externally. Others may say, his temperament or his character is so and so. He only smiles, for he knows his melody, and he knows it alone. Said Lanier, music means harmony, harmony means love, love means God. If we can get closer to God through living melody and harmony in a thoroughly rhythmic way, then surely God must become to us the real source of health and power. There is a bread of life which comes to us from the soul of music that is more necessary to our well-being than physical bread. Said the Master, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word which proceeds out of the mouth of God. And he also said, God is love, and love is both the fundamental and the dominant note of being. He who is inspired by the spirit of love will not only be able to receive his melody from the soul of life, but will also be able to impart of his divine melody and harmony to others. The emotion of love sets up a rhythmic vibration in the soul and moves out in never-ending rhythmic waves to influence and inspire the souls of others. Love is without beginning or ending, and when one is able to consciously draw from the source of love and then express that love through the singing or the speaking voice, the inner vibration continues ever after to make itself felt. He prayeth well, who loveth well both man, and bird and beast. He prayeth best, who loveth best all things both great and small. For the dear God who loveth us, he made and loveth all. The loving vibrations of a Jesus or a Buddha, as expressed through their lives while they lived on earth, are without doubt the greatest inheritance that the world is in possession of today. Because in all the years that have elapsed since they lived in this world, the loving vibration set up by them has gone forth from them and has united itself with the love in the hearts and minds of those people who have become attuned, as it were, to the love that lived in the Jesus and the Buddha, a love that lives in a far greater way in the world of the present than it has ever done in the past, a love that is being expressed in thought, in word, and in deed by all those who believe in them. Music filled with the love spirit has greater power to stir man's highest emotions than anything else in life. Such music can color and give power to the life of the one who becomes attuned to it, and this love and power can be transmitted as was the love and power of the Jesus and the Buddha to the lives of others, and the melody flowing from it can be produced, not only through the singing voice, but the speaking voice as well, so that the whole life may come to find full and complete expression through love and beauty in tone and color, and thus man may become a true revelation of God on earth. End of chapter.